Hi, I'm Kate Kristoffel for Hesed International. So in this video, we're going to talk about why are we building prosperous, self-sustaining communities or villages, or what we call King Solomon kingdoms. All right, so to understand why we're building, right, and build well, we need to understand the history. We need to understand the past. So bear with me on some things. It's going to all tie in, but really it is important to understand how did we get to where we are today that causes us to have to build these things, right? How did we arrive here? Today, the world is so filled with evil. I mean, there are other times in history when we've had this much evil, but it's an evil time, right? We've got military wars between Russia and Ukraine. We've got, in the Middle East, women being burnt or stoned for trying to leave their husbands, for their abusive husbands. The biggest business in the world right now is the sex slave industry. We've got the highest suicide rates ever in the world, the highest disease rates in the world. The place is just evil right now. And so how did we get here that makes us need to build self-sustaining, prosperous kingdoms? Why is God asking us to do that? So we need to understand what's going on. So let's look at all throughout history, right? The theme, we're going to go with, with this approach. It's always been a battle between good and evil since the beginning of time. All right. So in that battle, it's always been a struggle. One is always, in power, or the other. It keeps changing hands. So let's look at that. All right. Let's start with, we're going to look at family lines, because good comes down family lines, and so does evil travels through family lines. So let's evaluate some things. First of all, we're going to look at Jacob and Esau. So Jacob was the good brother. He had some bad moments, but overall good. And Esau, his twin brother, was the evil one. So what happened is, even in the womb, these twin boys battled even in the womb, and even battled for their birthright. So birthright is historically the firstborn son received the birthright, the rights to the father's status, businesses, livestock, land, people, position, right? That was always passed down to the firstborn son. All right. So Jacob was already to be born first and receive the birthright. He was the intended to be born first, but Esau kind of, got in there and it says stuck his hand out and was, declared the firstborn, and he received the birthright. All right. So as they're growing up, they're battling it out, for favor with their mom and dad. And generally Esau was the irresponsible one, and Jacob was generally the responsible one. And one day, Jacob was cooking, responsibly cooking for the family. And Esau comes in and he's hungry. And he says, give me a bowl of that stew and I'll give you my birthright in exchange for a bowl of stew. And of course, Jacob says, sure. And so Esau, succumbs to his hunger, and Jacob gets the birthright. Father is on his deathbed, hands the birthright to Jacob. There's a lot to the story. I'm being very brief, but Jacob receives the birthright. Dad dies. Esau is bitter and angry, right? Because Jacob now has the birthright. All right. So there's the start of bitterness and anger, a generational line or a family line of bitterness and anger. Let's just break down Jacob's family line a little bit. All right. God renamed Jacob, and his new name was Israel. All right. And he said, you're going to be a father to many nations. All right. So Israel had moved forward. He had 12 sons. All right. And so the way it worked back then, the 12 sons then became leaders of tribes. Their families then formed tribes. So the 12 sons formed 12 tribes. They're called the 12 tribes of Israel. All right. And they lived in the land of, you guessed it, Israel, right about there. All right. So they're going along. Now God says, these are my chosen ones. These are my people that live my way, right? And they're blessed and they're favored, and because they follow my ways. And I want them to be an example to others, so others can live my way as well. So they're called, so the nation of Israel, God's chosen ones, to witness to other people to live his way. All right. So a couple generations later, we have King Solomon. Now, King Solomon, he is still regarded the wisest and wealthiest man ever to live. Now, they went hand in hand, right? So because he was wise, he became very wealthy. And he was wise because he always sought God's direction, God's way to do things. And so as a result, he had great wealth. And everyone, his whole kingdom, everyone was healthy. Everyone was wealthy. Everyone contributed to the kingdom, had something to offer, and everyone received from the kingdom. There was peace, there was joy. They weren't at war. Like it was a beautiful kingdom in the land of Israel. And even kings and queens from all kinds of other nations came to King Solomon to consult with him and said, you know, what are you doing that's so right? And so King Solomon was able to show them how to rule and govern and live God's way. And that was the exact purpose why they were the chosen ones, to show other people how to live God's way. All right. Well, unfortunately, Solomon started marrying wives from other nations, and they started to bring other belief systems in, and King Solomon's kingdom collapsed, and actually King Solomon died. All right. One fun fact, King Solomon's temple alone, just to give you an idea of how much wealth he had, just the temple, or the church, you could call it the church building, just that alone is valued at today $216 trillion, 603,576,000 US dollars. That's what it would be worth today in an equal value. So this guy is pretty smart, right? All right. So let's see. Now, just a reminder, remember, it's always a struggle between good and evil. Who's going to be in power? King Solomon, in his day, generally good was in power, right? And all right, so let's look at, right. So when King Solomon died, right, 10 of the tribes moved to the north of Israel, and 2 of the tribes moved to the south. So they divided, they split up. And we've heard the saying, divided or united we stand, divided we fall, right? Or divide and conquer. Well, this was the end of what King Solomon had started. They were toast. What happened was other tribes, other nations, evil tribes came and took them into captivity. Because remember, they're God's chosen ones. So there was jealousy, right? Because they had favor. There was jealousy, anger, and bitterness in the world. So they took them all into captivity, took all of their things. So then all of the tribes of Israel went to, they were taken captive by the Egyptians, right here. They were taken captive by the Babylonians. which is about here, Iran, Iraq, a little bit of Saudi Arabia in there, and then also Assyrians, and they were up here in Turkey and Syria. So they're taken captive into all of these lands, right? So geographically, they're taken from their land. That's important when we look later on. So they're split up, they're divided, and they're taken far away from their land, which means they were also taken from their culture. They weren't allowed to practice God's ways in their cultures. They tried, but and then generations grew up in captivity and never knew God's ways. So it just started to get watered down, right? All right, let's look at just a note. Remnants or family lines of these, they're called the lost tribes of Israel, right? The 10 in the north actually never went back to their land. They from captivity, they went here. When they got out of captivity, they just spread all over the world, all right? All split up and divided. And most of them today don't know their heritage. And that's a key for when we talk about the present and the future. That's a key point to remember. All right. The 10 tribes from the 2 tribes from the south, they actually moved back to Israel. They moved back to their land. So they're there today. All right. So let's look a quick peek now. Let's look at Esau's line. Well, today we're going to do a quick fast forward. Lots happened in there, of course, but today, the line of Esau is, we know them today as the families, or some of them are the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds today own most of the major banks in the world, and they basically run the world banking system. Right? So they control all of that. They're in all kinds of other things, but they're kind of their main thing is the banking systems. Now, right? They literally control the money of the world. All right. Then we have the Rockefellers, are also from the line of Esau. Rockefellers. All right. So these guys, Rockefellers are really into, they started out in oil. So they're in the oil business or fossil fuel business. They also got into pharmaceuticals, or what we call big pharma. They're also into food systems and some real estate as well, and many other businesses, but those are their primary ones. All right. This is important to remember to where we are today in the present. So here we are, Rothschilds and Rockefellers are part of that line. All right. Let's go down. Let's look at a few other family lines. Let's look at Nimrod. All right. Nimrod, actually, he was way before Jacob and Esau. He was 2100 BC, so quite a few years before. But this guy was bad with a capital B-A-D. This guy didn't do anything good. So he's the one. Let's see what are his claims to fame. Here's his family line. So he created what's called the master race. He was the one who developed the caste system, and what that means is he determined that the light-skinned people were the superior master race. And then as the skin color darker, they were the lowest level race. That was his doing. All right. Now his people, Nimrod, was in, here we are. He was in Turkey. Yeah, we're going to just put right here. We're going to put him right here. And his people actually migrated to Germany, interestingly enough, because we know in not too recent history, that's where the Aryan race was established or declared as the master race by people like Hitler, right? So we can see now the importance of family lines and how things come through from the past. We obviously know what happened in Germany. All right, Nimrod also established dynasties. So dynasties were basically powerful families, but they weren't appointed by God, right? So these were dynasties are like royalty that hoard the money, right? That they're rich, and they get richer, the poor get poorer. That would be kind of a dynasty. They're very controlling and control all the wealth. That was established through Nimrod. Also established secret societies. All right, so secret societies such as Freemasonry, also the Vatican. All of these were established through Germany over in Europe. So the Vatican, obviously out of Italy, yeah. So, and there's more that we're going to go through in the future or the present, but all of that really came out of these dynasty families that all work together for control of religion through the Vatican. Freemasonry mainly targeted business and tradespeople. And there are more of them today, but this is where they were established, these secret societies. So secret society being obviously, so a society is an organized group of people with a specific purpose, and they're secretive, right? And if something's secretive, you know there's something wrong because they're hiding something. So this all comes through the line of Nimrod. All right. So now let's look at, he was also responsible for a lot of occult religions, came out of Nimrod's line. All right, let's look at little known Siba. He was the great grandson or a grandson of Noah from the flood. So King Siba, and he established, there we go, Hindu religion, which is a cult. Hindu, very much about hierarchies and like superiority and inferiority and all kinds of witchcraft kind of things established through King Siba. Also, let's look at Ishmael. All right. So Ishmael, he was an illegitimate son of Abraham. So Abraham and his wife Sarah, they were promised that they would have many, many, many children, but they were getting on in age, weren't conceiving. So he slept with Sarah's servant Hagar, and Ishmael was born. All right, but then, not that long after, Sarah became pregnant and she had Isaac, right? So now Isaac got the birthright because he was the legitimate son of Sarah and Abraham. Well, that made Hagar and Ishmael very bitter and angry. So they created divisiveness in the camp, in the tribe. And so they were kicked out and they were left to roam in the desert. So a lot more anger and more bitterness came upon them for that. Now, Ishmael, that was the seed, that bitterness and anger was the seed to plant Islam, right? Or some people know them as Muslims. So a Muslim practices the religion of Islam. Well, Islam, written in their book, their Bible, the Quran, is out to kill the infidel being God's followers. and it's part of their mandate to kill. So we know they've have organizations like ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, and there's several others. But ISIL is another one. But that was all founded back here with the anger towards, again, the good and evil, good and evil. It's always been a battle. And these were the evil lines fighting the good line. And these are just some of them. So here we go. This gives us a bit of an understanding of where everything is rooted from, right? Where it came from. And it came from anger and bitterness and jealousy, right? So, and these forces are in power today. That's why we have more evil today, or so much evil today, because evil has taken over. All right. So let's just pull all this together. Let's summarize this and say, let's look at the key points to take forward to the next video on today, the present day. All right. Number one, in the end times, God says, I am reuniting my tribes of Israel, right? In the end times, he is pulling all his tribes of Israel together. I'll just read a few, let's see here. Amos 9:13 to 15. Okay, this is more about, I'll just read it. So I'm saying that am I saying that Israel stumbled so badly they will never get back up? Certainly not. Rather, it was because of their stumble that salvation now extends to all the non-Jews or the non-Israelites, in order to make Israel jealous and desire the very things God has freely given them, right? So basically, the Israelites were his chosen ones. Let me draw this out. I'll use a new color. Here we go. You can see there. All right. So basically, I'll do it, you see down here. There we go. So we have the Israelites, and then we have the non-Israelites. They were called the Gentiles, right? So these were the chosen ones right here, right? Like, God's chosen ones, right? And they were walking with God, but then they fell away from God. There we go. And so then the Gentiles started finding God, right? So they began getting favor from God. And so now it's time for the Gentiles to be leading the Israelites, the people from the line of Israel, back to God. That's basically what he's saying here. All right, here we go. Let's look at let's look at Ezekiel 36:24 to 26. For I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all countries and bring you back into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove you from your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. All right, let's look at one more. It says here, I will accept you as a fragrant incense when I bring you out of the nations and gather you from the countries you have been scattered, and I will show myself holy among you in the sight of nations. And that's Ezekiel 20:41. All right, so we see God desires to bring them back together and unite the Israelites together with him and one another, and also the Gentiles. We're talking oneness, right? Oh, that's awesome. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, Romans 11 says, which we've already kind of, I'm just summarizing, he's pulling the Gentiles and the Israelite, the former tribes of Israel together as one as well. All right, 3, in order to battle well, we need to understand the enemy, right? So we need to be like Nehemiah, right? So we're building, right? We're building God's kingdom. We're going to do it physically through these self-sustaining, prosperous communities, or we're calling King Solomon kingdoms, right? So we need to build like Nehemiah, with a sword in one hand and a hammer in the other. So we need to understand Nehemiah was a master strategist. He surveyed the situation. He understood the enemy and he made strategies accordingly, right, to rebuild. So we need to understand the enemy like Nehemiah. We need to count the cost, as in Luke 14:25-33. We need to be gentle as doves, but wise as servants, right? And then we need to, we need to strategize. We need to strategize, right? We need to create a strategy, but we need to gather the information first. All right. And then number 4, we need to understand, why are we doing this? Why are we battling? How did we get here? Well, now we see why. We see why that all that evil exists today. Well, the seeds were planted a long time ago, centuries ago. All right. And finally, number 5, understanding the past helps us see where the evil altars were planted. And so we know how to pray, because that's part of our warfare strategy, is praying. We can take down or like dismantle or clean evil altars that were established in the past, in family lines, in people, and the land. Right? So when we have to understand the history, then we can take back the land, because part of building villages or kingdoms, we need to take land, right? But the land has a lot of blood spilt on it, has a lot of bitterness and anger that needs to be cleaned out. All right. So just like evil comes down family lines, blessing comes down family lines. So evil comes down family lines in Genesis 12:1-3. Or sorry, that's not the right one. Exodus 34:7, it says, when one man sins, his children are cursed for 3 to 4 generations, right? So it comes down family lines. All right. And then blessing comes down family lines, right? So it says the blessing of Abraham is from Genesis 12:1-3. It says, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make you your name great, and you will be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. That's a blessing coming down the family line, right? So these are the things that we need to cut off, the evil coming down the lines, and we need to open up the blessing lines. All right. So these evil roots are in action today, but the blessing, the good remnant is also there. And the good news is we have the power through our words and the authority to tear down all the evil and stop the evil in these family lines. We have the power to do that. I've done that in my own family line, and we can all do that. All right, that's it for the past. We're going to move on in the next video to today, the present. All right, bless you.